place to.
Recently, they were at the White House trashing Michelle Obama. I mean, you know.
You mean the UFC?
Yeah. It's kind of.
Well, but you know what?
The indignity of these poor guys having to go down there.
But you know what?
But I have to say that I don't agree with the Republican position. I don't agree with Trump. I don't agree with J.D. Vance. I was nice to him. I respect the position.
Yeah.
I respect the office. And so I'm feeling two ways about it. Like, yes, maybe you have to respect the White House. You don't have to respect who's in the White House, though.
But I think there's a reason why every single, the previous 5 NBA champions crowned during the Trump administration refused to go. I think there's a reason for it, and that's because he politicizes the events that come before him. That's one of the problems. I don't think you can separate Trump from the White House, even though we would like to, because it is the people's house. He doesn't treat it like the people's house.
I want them to go.
Do you?
I want all those black men to stand in our house and remind all of those people, as we try to remind
the vice president,
that when you try to destroy one part of history, you're destroying all of our histories. And they, as champions, not only as amazing basketball players, but as people who were down and came back up. This is what this looks like.
Yes.
This is what this looks like. So I want them to go. I want them to go, if only so the kids know that nobody can keep you down if you are rising up. That's what I want.
I remain very...
What's up, family? The New York Knicks just won their first championship in 25 years. Got invited to the White House, said yes, and the View completely lost their minds over it, as you guys can see in this clip. Grown men, NBA champions, and a panel on daytime television is in their feelings about where these players choose to go celebrate. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications because we're going to break this clip right here all the way down. So let's start at the beginning because the context matters here. The Knicks get invited to the White House, standard stuff. Every championship team gets that invite. It's tradition. It has nothing to do with your politics, your beliefs, or who you voted for. You won. The president says come through. That's how it works. But the View can't just let it be what it is. Joy Behar gets on that stage and says she's torn. Joy Behar, her words, torn. She says she respects the office, but not the person in it. Okay, fine. That's her opinion, and she's entitled to it. But then in the very next breath, she calls it an indignity for the players to go. You can't have it both ways. Either you respect the office or you don't. You can't say the White House deserves respect and then turn around and call it an indignity for champions to walk through the door. That's not being torn. That's just being inconsistent. And then Joy brings up the UFC. Talking about, oh, well, they talked about Michelle Obama at the UFC 250 because Josh Hokett said Michelle Obama is a man, quote unquote. That was Joy Behar's next reference. She referenced that a White House visit where fighters were there and somebody made a comment about, like I mentioned, Josh Hokett about Michelle Obama. Now, here's what they won't tell you. It wasn't they, quote unquote. There were 7 fighters on that card. One guy said one thing, Josh Hokett. One. And in his humorous way, he seen it as courageous and joking and a way to troll to get back at the mainstream liberal media who caused Trump's fascist, Nazi, et cetera, and the whole administration, right? And there were black fighters on that same card who didn't say a word out of line. Nobody on The View acknowledged that. If you want to make it a race thing in regards of just saying the truth and letting it be where the truth lies, they just lumped the whole event together to make their point land cleaner. That's not analysis, or that's not an analyst. That's cherry picking. But here's what really got me. Joy Behar said there's a reason the previous 5 NBA champions during Trump's first term refused to go. And to be honest, when I say Joy Behar, I mean Sunny Hostin, Whoopi Goldberg, because as you guys can see, the lunch ladies are in agreement with each other every step of the way, step light for the majority of the time. They are in agreement in everything each other says. So, and she's not wrong, right? that some teams passed on that invite. But to frame it like Trump is the one who made it political, family, think about that for a second. The players who went didn't make it political. The teams that said no, that was political. The View talking about it right now, that's political. Trump didn't sit down and turn the championship celebration into a cultural war. The people on that stage did that. Men, women, all sports, all backgrounds, they all going to the White House under this administration or before when Trump was in office in his first term and just under previous administrations of their choosing. Nobody who actually went made it weird. Nobody who went came out and said they felt disrespected. The players didn't make a statement. They went, they celebrated, they shook hands. That's it. The View is the one that turned a basketball team celebration into a referendum on race, politics, and identity. And I believe this clip, as you guys seen with me, is self-explanatory. Not Trump, not the Knicks. The panel did it themselves on live television in front of millions of people. And they didn't even realize the irony of what they were doing. Now, here's where Whoopi takes it somewhere that made me just want to stop the whole video completely. Whoopi Goldberg looks at the camera and says, as you guys seen, and I quote, "I want all those black men to go stand in our house." I need you to sit with that for a second. Not, "I want the champions to go." Not, "I want the Knicks to go." She specifically said, "the black men." Those were her exact words. And the moment she said it, she stopped talking about a basketball team celebrating a title and started talking about something else entirely. She turned these athletes into symbols, into a statement, into a march. And these men didn't sign up for any of that. They signed up to play basketball, they won a championship, and they said yes to a White House event. Let's just keep it basketball. That's the whole story. But here's the part that nobody on the panel wanted to address. The black men, the ones Whoopi is fired up about, what does it matter? Right? In all race and unity, this team fought hard through a treacherous, challenging NBA season to get to the top. What does it matter? So are they wrong because they have a white head coach? Like, where are you getting at? What I'm saying is, family, this whole black man, quote unquote thing, it's just no substance. It's just division, which I'm against. And I hopefully advocate for us to be all together in unity, no matter what your race is, and just basically signify, or I should say, how can I put this? Represent the good work ethic, the characteristics of rising to the top. She could have just said rising to the top. She didn't have to say these black men and put labels and, separate the whole team and basically categorize wise only speak to a specific race on the team. There's white men, there's a white head coach on the Knicks. It's black men, white men. The NBA has been known. The NBA in particular has been very known all the way back to Michael Jordan, even further back, to be very diverse. And I believe it was one of the sports, the main sports, who basically embedded, I should say, embedded the diversity to the extreme, from China and playing in the Dream Team all the way back from Charles Barkley. And so I'm saying all that to say, family, that the inclusion that the View in one hand likes to advocate, but then in the same way put labels to, in this case, break up and divisively label and only speak to a specific race about a Knicks team instead of just enjoying the beauty of triumph in a basketball team that haven't for the last 25 years or so couldn't make it to the championship. Why can't we just embrace that? Why can't we just celebrate it? Just full of joy. The characteristics of things being celebratory. Because the characteristics of things being celebratory is just basically being happy for one another, being joyful, being grateful, being victorious, right? All of those things have nothing to do with race when it comes to joy. If anything, the joy got taken away for these men who won this championship. And now all of a sudden, rhetoric has been put in the way of divisiveness. Come on, we got to stop that. You take away the beauty of sports, right? The beauty of sports was it always unified anyone, regardless of their political beliefs, regardless of their faiths, regardless of any of that. We could come together and have a good time. America strong, baby. So I say all that to say they play on it like I don't understand. James Dolan owns the Knicks. So are you discrediting the man who owns the team of the Knicks because he's not black? I don't understand where this goes, fam. You see what I'm saying? It just spewed divisive rhetoric that's unnecessary. I'm gonna leave it there with that one. Now, not one person on the View had a single problem with that arrangement, right? Not one segment, not one conversation. The moment it was just basketball, everything was fine. The moment Trump's name got attached to it, a celebration, suddenly the black players need to make a political statement just by walking through a door. That's where I'm getting at. Because the political rhetoric, we all know that the View is not a big fan or not very fond of this current administration and who is our president. On top of that, they say inclusion, which means everybody sits at the table because inclusion has been remixed in so many different definitions to benefit someone's political bias or someone narrative in a biased way in which they want to make things to be what they want it to be instead of the actual definition. It doesn't matter the race, everybody sits at the table. That's inclusion. But now, like I said, it's going against your whole thing that you so-called advocate for on the View, which is inclusion, because you're basically now just speaking to specific individuals and picking this Nick team apart who won the championship and looking at race, right? So you can't make this stuff up, right? And then, bringing up the roster, right? When someone brought up the roster, you guys can go continue to watch the rest of the segment. I just got this one clip and I wanted to have a conversation with you guys because I think this embellished a lot, or I think this encapsulated the most of what I wanted to have the conversation with you guys about. But somebody in that conversation brought up the roster family. And let's be real, who's actually on the team? Jalen Brunson is a starting point guard. He's the heart of the team. He's the reason the Knicks made it as far as they did. Jalen Brunson, right? His wife is white. Like, why do we go in this route? Right? Why? Just why? So when Whoopi says she wants the black man to make a statement, what is she actually saying about Brunson, for example? He doesn't count. They say a man is is strong. The man who is strong also has a strong woman behind him. He's your support. She's his support. And I did a little bit of research because, I like to inform myself. Jalen Brunson's wife is a physical therapist, and she actually went there and went to school for it, and very highly skilled and end up using her skill to make sure her husband stay intact to get the Knicks where they are as a starting point guard. So I'm saying all that to say that when you start adding race, you actually be divisive, and my point of substantiate my point, because now if you're going to be divisive and start just talking about only black men and trying to pick apart this team, now you're discrediting people and only acknowledging certain people when it's all a teamwork thing, which is the beauty of sports and the joy of sports, regardless of race, is my point. Teamwork. So the guy who carried the franchise of the Knicks doesn't factor in the conversation because he doesn't fit the narrative she's trying to build. Whoopi Goldberg. It's the same crowd that preaches diversity, equity, and inclusion every single day. But when it's convenient to ignore certain players based on the race that they want to acknowledge, they ignore them with zero hesitation. Where's the equity in that? And let's clear something up, because this idea that, I guess, speaking to it, I don't know, she didn't say this specifically, but it seems like she insinuated in a way. That's what I'm saying. It just takes the joy of it, because now it's like insinuating black people, the idea that black people going to the White House is some rare, radical thing. That's not true. Black Americans have been in the building thousands of times in the White House under every president, Republicans, Democrats, it doesn't matter. There have been Black History Month events at the White House. Black businesses, leaders, athletes, artists, entertainers, activists, vendors, all of them walk through the doors, having a contractual agreement with the government to get paid a certain amount to be a vendor for a certain event like Black History Month. So this is not a new thing. This is not groundbreaking. This is not a protest. When you frame it like black men going to the White House is somehow extraordinary or dangerous or needs a specific political message attached to it, you're not celebrating the team. You're othering them. You're treating them like they need permission or purpose or just to exist in a room where they were invited as champions, the whole team. That's not empowerment. That's the soft bigotry of low expectations dressed up in applause. But then she said something that really crossed the line, right? Because Whoopi then compares the Knicks' journey, their basketball season, to the people buried at Arlington Cemetery. Arlington Cemetery, the men and women who gave their lives to service this country. The soldiers who came home in flag-draped coffins. To use them as a comparison point for a basketball team that had a rough stretch and then won a title. Family, I need you to understand what's actually happening because Whoopi thought she was paying these players a compliment. She thought she was lifting them up, but what she actually did was reduce the sacrifice of every fallen soldier to a metaphor for a sports comeback story. And at the same time, she made these millionaire athletes sound like they were suffering. Like they were struggling just to survive. These are men making tens of millions of dollars to play basketball. Some of them didn't even get significant minutes during the playoffs. The bench guys on the New York Knicks are making more money than almost every person watching The View ever will, or some individuals ever will in their lifetime. Because the opportunity is there. It depends on the individual, how hard they want it. So I'm not going to say people aren't capable, but some people live different, right? Some people don't care about riches or having a lot of money or being wealthy. They just want to live comfortable. Understandable. Everyone have their own preference. So I'm not going to say that almost every person watching The View will ever in their lifetime, not make enough money as the Knicks players on the bench. I take that back. My apology. But when you look at it, where exactly is the down and out part that Whoopi talked about? Yes, the Knicks had tough seasons. Yes, they fought through this year and earned the title. Nobody's taking that away from them. But there's a difference between acknowledging a hard-fought championship run and painting professional athletes as downtrodden people who need a White House visit to prove they survived something. That framing doesn't honor them, it shrinks them. It takes men who are at the absolute top of their profession and drives them back into a victim story that they never wrote for themselves. And then she said she wants the kids to know that nobody can keep you down when you're rising. But pay attention to which kids she was talking about. She didn't say all kids. She didn't say every single person watching. She specifically meant black kids. In 2026, as if the message "you can rise," quote unquote, only needs to be delivered to one group. As if every other kid in this country has already figured that out, has already has that figured out and doesn't need to hear it. We all face adversity from all shape and form, no matter what race. There's going to be some way or some time or some season in our lives we have some type of adversity. And when we come through it and see the light at the end of the tunnel is wisdom, and we have a character building season through that challenge to become better individuals, hopefully, and be productive individuals in society. Right? But that's the tale from Whoopi, right? That speaking to only one group as if other kids in the country got to figure it out. Right there, that's the worldview slipping from underneath the applause line. And when you assign a political and racial mission to a basketball team that just wanted to celebrate, you're not doing it for those players. You're doing it for your narrative. And it's what in Whoopi's case, the Knicks went to the White House as champions, not as symbols, not as soldiers, not as messengers for a generation. If anything, they inspired a generation just based on what they did as champions. We know how integrated the NBA is when it comes to social media. They have their basketball camps. You have some big time athletes from the NBA. They do like boot camps and give back and things like that to their communities or where they're from. We've seen LeBron James do it. We've seen plenty of that out of Iverson. Plenty of big time Steph Curry, big time players who have give back to the community, boot camps or summer boot camps to teach the young generation, the next generation basketball techniques and the basics and things like that. So a panel on daytime TV doesn't get to reclassify what they are, the Knicks, and why they showed up. The players know what they did. They don't need Whoopi to explain it to the children. Because here's what this actually looks like in real life. A young black kid watching those Knicks players walk into the White House doesn't need a commentator to tell him what it means. He sees it. He feels it. Men who worked, competed, and won at the highest level got invited somewhere great, and they went. That's the message. That's the whole message. And it's powerful on its own without the weight of a protest or a political statement stapled to it. The meaning Whoopi assigned to that visit says a lot more how she sees black people, if anything, than it does about the players. And I want to bring it home, family, because everything we just broke down points to something much bigger than one basketball team and one television show. Here's the truth. At the highest levels of success, real rooms, real money, real opportunity, nobody's sitting across from you thinking about your color. They're thinking about what you bring, your value. See, I learned something that takers and takers are psychotic. A giver and a taker is neurotic. I feel it goes something like this. There we go. Takers and takers is psychotic. A giver and a taker is neurotic. and a giver and a giver is exotic. And wealthy people, they give you the time of the day if they know what you bring, because they trade ideas. What you built, what you bring, whether you can hold a conversation, whether you're competent, whether you are confident, whether your word means something. That's what gets you in the door and keeps you there. And shout out to these basketball players, because they brought value to the NBA, shared their talents, competed at the highest level in the world, making it to the NBA. Not a lot of individuals can. You know, they have the height limitations and things like that. But through all of that, they showed our gifts, they inspired. And, you know, basketball alone has the creativity aspect, dribbling the ball, you know, being able to draft up plays, last minute leadership, things like that. So think about it like this. When you're operating at a low level financially, mentally, in terms of where you are in life, race to some individuals feels like the biggest thing in the room, because when there's not much else going on, grievances fill the space. But the higher you climb, the more you realize that successful people are not sitting around sorting each other by color. They're sorting by results. Can you produce? Can you deliver? Are you someone worth being in business with? I mean, treat others how you would want to be treated. Be a good person, be confident, and what value can you bring? And then as you see a giver and a giver, because wealthy people come off as takers, but then when you come together and they see what value you bring, they bring value as well, because they're asking you what value you bring because they want to bring value. And then it becomes an exotic relationship where then it adds value to the world. And then wealth comes later, but you have to do it passionate and be passionate, whether you make money or not, to then make money and then thrive. So are you someone worth being in business with? Those are the only questions that matter at the top. The people who keep the race conversation alive every single hour, every single day, are not the ones building. They're the ones watching the other people build and trying to convince you that building doesn't count because of who's in the White House. Family, you can disagree with someone politically and still walk into a room with your head up. That's not weakness. That's not selling out. That's being an adult. That's being mature. That's understanding that your presence somewhere is not an endorsement of everything, and your absence doesn't mean you're right. It doesn't make you righteous. It just makes you absent. So Proverbs chapter 22, verses 29 says, do you see someone skilled in their work? They will serve before kings. These men were skilled. They put the work in, they won, and they earned that seat at the table on merit alone. No panel on daytime television, no hot take, no lecture about dignity. Gets to walk in after the fact and reclassify what these players earned. Character got them there. Character will always get you there. Talent is what takes you, but character is what keeps you. You ever heard of that saying, family, where they say an individual who makes a lot of money too quick, but they don't have the character building aspect down yet, meaning self-discipline or self-control? Well, the thing is, you can get something you're not fully prepared for. So if you have the characteristics of not having discipline or self-control, you're going to spend all that money. And money just exposes more of who you already are. So, and no amount of noise from a television studio changes that, based on speaking specifically to the Knicks in The View. The View didn't throw a tantrum because the Knicks went to the White House. They threw one because the Knicks didn't ask for permission first. These men earned that invite. They didn't need a cosign from a daytime talk show to validate what they built. Remember that. Drop a comment and tell me what you think if these players made the right call. I want to hear from you, family. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications, spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. On that one, love you guys. Peace.